Inside a peaceful town, a boy is playing with his friend, who is a wizard, and his friend is a monster that eats wizards. The boy hits his friend on the forehead, who demands not to be hit for real, but the boy notes that monsters are supposed to lose to wizards, so it's only natural that he does. The friend wants to be a wizard too if that is the case, and an old man who is watching them laughs, as they sure are energetic in the morning. This is Grandpa Rebus, and the boy asks what he needs to do in order to become a wizard, as he wants to defeat monsters too. Rebus notes that he can't become one just because he wants to. Wizards are the apex of all humanity, ones who rule over humans from the highest hierarchies possible. They are nobles, and knights who inherited the ability to use mysterious powers from their ancestors. So, unfortunately, they cannot become wizards. One of the younger men wonders how he can say something like that to children who don't know any better, but also asks if what they are saying is true. Rebus asks what he means, and the young man notes that he heard a monster appeared. Rebus explains that it is true. They say Rop came across it at the entrance of the town last night. They said its entire body was covered in a pitch-black shadow. It was a leopard, as big as a house, or that's according to Rop. But they needn't worry. The village chief went to the city to request a wizard already. He will definitely bring that wizard back, and the monster will be subdued before it can do any damage. The mother of one of the children thinks it's a relief, and tells her children not to go into the forest for the time, as it's too dangerous for them. Rebus picks up the stick, and notes that they should all be careful for the moment. Without a wizard, killing a monster is an impossible feat for mere humans like them. The young man wonders if all the villagers know, and Rebus thinks so, but the young man doesn't know about that. What about the shepherd on Hisaril Hill, Turan? He is currently lying on one of his sheep, bored to death as the sheep circle him. Every day, he sees the same scenery, does the same things, without anything interesting happening. At this rate, he is really going to forget how to talk. He wishes he had someone to speak with all day. Suddenly Rebus appears, calling him a pathetic brat. The sun has not even started to set in the sky, and he dares to slack off. Turan tells him that he's blocking his sunlight, so he should move, causing Rebus to say that he has no manners. Is he truly still holding on to that incident from back then? Turan doesn't know what he means, but then remembers. He means when his mother died, and instead of helping, he tried to quietly turn the sheep into his shared property? If that is what he means, then indeed he's not generous enough to share the only thing his mother left him after all. They are also not close enough to be asking how they are doing to each other. So if he came here, he should say what he wants and get lost. Rebus is about to scream at him, but Turan looks at him, demanding he spit it out already. Rebus explains that a monster has appeared, causing Turan to get up. They say it's a leopard the size of a house. Rop found it. He's on his way back after informing all of the villagers. Turan notes that it's a serious problem as he pets the sheep, and Rebus sees that he is not scared, even though he is the likeliest one to suffer from this situation. He doesn't know what kind of guts he has, or if he's just too stupid to understand. Anyway, the village chief already went to the city to request a wizard, so he should be careful. That's why he came, because he was worried about him. Turan notes that he's not very honest for an old man. Why can't he just say that he came because he was actually worried for the sheep? Rebus is about to scream again, but Turan stops him and notes that if he is done talking, he should be on his way already, as his breath stinks so bad his nose feels like it's about to fall off. Rebus reluctantly goes away as he grumbles to himself, and Turan turns to his sheep. Monsters are beasts that wield mysterious power and magic. If humans have wizards, then the beasts have monsters. Turan is surprised that a wizard is coming to a backwater village because of one monster, although he finally is going to see a wizard in person. However, if it's a rural village chief calling them, there's a good chance that they won't be anything special, even if they are a wizard. Even so, he wants to see one. He always wondered how strong one is. Suddenly his nose picks up a metallic scent, causing him to be on guard. That smell is the smell of blood. He decides to follow it as the sun goes down, and he walks throughout the forest, which is getting dark at this point, and using his nose, eventually finds where that smell was coming from. It's Rebus. He was completely split in half. He told him to be careful, but here he is, going first. Turan remains calm, as this is not a wound an ordinary wild animal would make. It has to be the work of a monster, isn't it? Suddenly he hears a loud thud behind him, as the leopard-like beast appears, growling at Turan as it emanates a deathly thick miasma around it. The child who was playing before asks how strong a monster is. Is it true that not even adults can beat one? His father tells him that they are extremely strong. If ordinary adults like him rush it, they won't even be able to find his bones by the end. The boy understands, but what will happen to their village now? The father tells him not to worry as he puts some food in front of him. The village chief will bring a wizard after all, and the wizard will subjugate that monster. The child guesses that the wizard won't lose, as the wizard will punish the monster, won't he? The father agrees. They are great beings born with the power of magic. They will kill the monster with a single word. They are that strong. Turan does not flinch as the beast growls at him. Instead, he opens his mouth and only says one word, die. The monster immediately backs away, sensing an aura of suppression around the man. Turan guessed it wouldn't work, and the monster charges in again, this time pouncing on him. Turan simply says stop, and the beast dashes away again, going behind him. He knew that killing it wouldn't work, but it can't be stopped either. Sensing the danger it's in, the monster rushes in with a mighty claw, which crashes on the ground where Turan once stood. but he is long gone from there. If he cannot kill this beast with words, then he will do what a shepherd does. He pulls out a slingshot, and as the monster charges in again, he takes a rock, hardening it inside of his slingshot, before making his eyes glow as he commands it to become faster, and to pierce as he throws it. The rock breaks the sound barrier as it flies toward the monster, who has milliseconds to dodge, as the blast would have gone through him, but it only destroyed his ear. Knowing this is an opportunity he will not get again, the beast charges in, ready to rip its opponent apart, but Turan just smiles, as he wasn't actually aiming for the beast's body, but for its head. The rock comes flying down, roughly landing on the beast, for ending up on the ground nearby. With that, the monster is defeated, Turan noting that this is his first time using it against one. Maybe he should toss it into a valley or something, but he's kind of annoyed to be doing this kind of work for free. Naturally, Turan is a wizard. He realized he had special abilities 8 years ago. When he was 10, he showed his mother too. He thought it was something fun, something he could play with, and the memories of that day are still clear in his mind, because it was the first and last time his mother got mad at him. After that though, she knelt to him, as she wanted to have a chat. He wanted to live a long life with her for a long time, right? If so, she wanted him to promise that he won't use this power from now on, that he will never use it in front of other people, especially. Turan asked why, and his mother asked if he remembered the story about the noble and the knight. Turan did. They call the people who wield this special power wizards, whether they are nobles or knights. But nobles and knights are inherently different. Nobles are descendants of the divine people, the Freyans, who descended to save the old humans, and knights are the descendants of those nobles whose blood has been mixed with humans. His mother picked up her herding staff. She was glad he remembered. That is why they differentiate between nobles and knights, even among wizards. She will tell him why he can't use his powers, because he inherited them from his father, who was a knight. There are many evil nobles outside of this town, and the nobles treat most knights as their slaves. That's why she wanted him to remember. Nobody can know that he is a wizard. 8 years have passed since then. He continued to uphold the promise he made to his mother, and he plans not to break it either. He has no desire to reel himself as a wizard, or descend this mountain, as there is nothing for him there in the first place. A few hours pass, and someone bangs on his door roughly. When Turan opens it, he is met with the faces of the young men of the village, who seem rather angry. After a bit of explanation, Turan gets the gist of it. They are saying that he killed Rabus. Is that it? A more rowdy man grabs his collar and asks how shameful he can be. He hurt that old man, and then threw him out to be eaten by the beasts. He can't deny it. Turan remains silent for a bit, looking around. He can see why they would want to frame him. The oldest man in the village died a sad death all alone, instead of the young men who were too scared to even approach the forest. He can see why they think this is the best way. That's the easiest way to shift the blame from themselves to him. The burly man tries to hit him, but Turan simply gets out of his way and smashes his head into his nose. Magic is a rather convenient tool to have. If he strongly wishes for something, it happens at the cost of some mana. As the other men charge at him, he makes one of them trip silently. He doesn't need to start an entire fire after all. He only needs to use a little bit, so that it's not obvious. He grabs the hand of the one who charged at him and smashes his club into his own face. He will dominate them like this, again and again, to the point that they will not die. Just like that, for 8 years, he has hidden the fact that he is a wizard pretty well. He dusts himself off, noting that they should have used that strength for Rabus's burial. He asks the women who came with them if they are here to fight, but they deny such a thing. They just came to see him. Turan says nothing, and tells them to take these idiots with them before going down, as he doesn't want them on his grass. As he turns back into his home, Turan thinks that it's going to be chaos in their town again. They're going to use this as an excuse to rip him off when he goes to trade. Well, whatever. He can just beat them up until he gets a better deal. As he thinks so to himself, he hears another more gentle knock on the door. He opens it, expecting it to be some village girl or another group, but he is met with the face of an older individual who is not poorly dressed. He asked who he is, and the man apologized. He thought he could ask for a favor in his travels, but he must have caught him in a bad moment. Turan is surprised to see a traveler here, and apologizes for his outburst. It's just that a few uninvited guests came to see him a few moments ago. His mother taught him manners, but was that proper enough? He never talked nicely to anyone in that town, so this is pretty awkward. Anyway, it's strange that this traveler has a sword, especially in this town. Before Turan can point him to an inn, the man's stomach growls, so he invites him inside. Turan pulls out everything he has to feed the man. It's not much, but the man thinks that this is a feast. He surprised him though. He's never met someone outside of town. Turan confirms that he was born and raised on this hill, and has lived as a shepherd his entire life. It is also rare for this town to get any sort of travel. The man looks at him as he drinks and finds his posture interesting. For someone who grew up as a shepherd, he is quite well versed in manners. His parents must have taught him well. Turan explains that his mother taught him all he knows, but she died a few years ago due to an illness. The man makes a cross gesture, as he notes that she raised a proud son like him, so he is sure that she is residing in the heavens. He also thanks him again for the generous meal. Turan notes that he's just doing what he was taught, but also wonders what brings him all the way here, to this town. The man explains that he was asked a favor. They were looking for someone to take care of a monster puma, and well, he is a wizard. Turan is surprised and guesses he's the one the village elder talked about. The man confirms as such and wants to ask a few questions, if he doesn't mind. He sensed a monster in the area, but he didn't see one. What is weirder is that he knows about the village elder and the monster, yet he seems calm and isn't running away. If the monster went for a human, it would definitely be him. So why isn't he scared? He seems rather brave for a shepherd who never left his little home. He should be honest now. Who really is he? In the past, Turan asked why he couldn't let anyone know why he was a wizard, and his mother explained that it was because of bad nobles. They are shepherds, just like them, and the knights are like the dogs that herd the sheep. They might treat him with love, like a family would, but they can sell him off, or even sacrifice him. She did not wish for that kind of lie for him, and if he wanted to keep living with her, then he should remember this. Nobody can know that he is a wizard, especially other wizards. If they find out, he will be separated from her and turned into a dog. To avoid all of this, he may even have to kill a few people. Turan feels a little sad, as he didn't expect to ever have to do this. The wizard notes that he cannot answer then, but suddenly, his expression softens into a smile, as he says that if he makes faces like that, it makes his joke pretty awkward. Turan sweats a little, as what does he mean by joke? He apologizes, as he really doesn't have a good sense of humor. The mage notes that it's his fault. He probably flustered him with that attempt at comedy. Turan smiles, noting that it's his first time hearing a wizard joke, so he was caught off guard. The wizard is still pleased, as his reaction was quite entertaining, but now that he thinks about it, they haven't introduced themselves properly. He extends a hand as he introduces himself as Kiorn, a wanderer. Turan shakes his hand and apologizes for not introducing himself first. He is Turan, a shepherd. They chat into the night, with Turan explaining that he will turn 18 this year. Kiorn notes that he will be 75 this year, surprising Turan, as he certainly doesn't seem that old. Kiorn explains that wizards age more slowly than ordinary people, and live longer. Turan asks how he ended up becoming a wanderer with curiosity in his eyes, and Kiorn explains that after serving the Arabian family for 60 years, he left. In his later years, he wanted to roam from place to place without settling down. Turan thinks that's rather romantic, and they continue talking. Sharing a harmless conversation like this with a good person to be around, he never realized how enjoyable it could be. Night turns to dawn. Kiorn is surprised to see that it's already so late. Turan is surprised too. He didn't even notice the sun coming up. Kiorn gets up, noting that he should go. Before that though, he puts a coin on the table, Arabian silver. It's the purest among silver coins, so it should more than cover the cost of the meal. Turan accepts it gratefully, and hopes his hunt goes smoothly. Kiorn tells him not to act, as they will never see each other again. As he dresses, he might come by a few more times to mooch off of him after all. A few days later, Turan is in the valley with his sheep, as per usual, but he tells them to gather, and they begin doing so. He thinks about Kiorn, as that was his first time meeting another wizard. More than that though, how long has it been since he's had a conversation that felt so comfortable? The ease and humor that naturally seeped into his way of speaking, more than any adult he has ever met. That man is a good person. He always thought knights were just emotionless hounds, used by arrogant nobles. He sighs, putting that thought aside, as he wonders how to tell him that there are no monsters on Hisaril Hill. Kiorn walks around, finding this landscape rather strange. There are traces of battle all around, but he cannot feel the presence of a monster. As he looks at the stone Turan used to kill it, which is lodged in a tree, he wonders if it was already hunted. But if so, who did it? Did the village chief leave it to another wizard besides him? Either way, he's fine with it. If someone killed the monster and made things safe, that is all that matters. Suddenly though, his heart sinks with a deep pressure, and as he turns around he sees the shriveled corpse of that puma monster standing at attention, ready to strike him down. This is a monster wraith. As he wonders who would do something like this, the wraith strikes, forcing him to dodge. Kiorn thinks that if one doesn't absorb or disperse the mana from a dead monster's corpse, the monster turns into a wraith like this. A wizard who hunts monsters couldn't have possibly not known that. He dashes away again as the beast tries to swallow him, thinking that the one who killed it was definitely a wizard. But then why did they leave it to become a wraith? Did they not know it becomes a wraith if they don't absorb the mana? However, a novice knight who doesn't even know something like that couldn't have killed this thing in the first place. He charges up a ball of magic in his hand, wondering if this was their intention. Either way, he has to destroy it. He pulls the ball of energy with his right hand as he aims with his left, unleashing a bolt of magic right into the beast, but it nullifies his magic. This means that the monster's mana is vastly stronger than his. Suddenly, the beast disappears right in front of his eyes. It's probably trying to counter magic with magic. He feels around for it, but the amalgamation appears right out of his shadow, taking the shape of a ghastly worm. The wraith strikes, and Kiorn does manage to dodge, but he thinks that this isn't a level a mere knight can contend with. At the very least, a low-ranking noble would have at least a chance. He dashes away, not expecting to run into a monster wraith of this power in some remote village. Life really is strange sometimes. Whatever the case, it seems that this will be his end. This thing will probably take his life. As he heaves though, he grits his teeth, as he is not just going to die obediently. Even if he does, he will take this thing with him. He concentrates all of his mana into his hand, as if he stabs it directly the moment it lunges at him, he will have a chance. the Wraith goes in to strike, and Kiorn reacts too, dashing in with the last memento of his mana left in his hand. Suddenly though, a blue strike appears from the dark forest and smashes into the Wraith, killing it instantly as its head is blown off. Taran asks if he's alright, and Kiorn notes that his shepherd jokes aren't that funny either. Kiorn expected him to be a wizard after all, but why didn't he tell him? Seeing as Taran is not answering, he changes the question. Why did he help him just now? He could have just walked away and continued to live his life in peace. Taran remembers that Kiorn came back one day with a wolf, and he asked why he was going this far. He didn't know what the village chief promised him, but with his skills, he could probably earn a lot more money at a more comfortable pace. Kiorn laughed, and noted that they are just pitiful people. Taran asked in what way, so he explained that living out here on the frontier, trembling in fear, without the most basic protection, that makes them pitiful. Taran noted that this wasn't his fault, so Kiorn explained that a wizard, by nature, is someone who inherited the power of a god. If so, then they should live with pride in protecting the powerless. Well, not every wizard thinks like he does. Everyone has their own thoughts, their own way of living this life. Taran smiles, and notes that this is just his way of living. Suddenly though, the Wraith comes back to life and tries to smash Kiorn, making them both dodge. He tells Taran to listen carefully. This is not at a level they can handle. This is a monster one cannot fight, so he should go tell the village chief immediately, and help them evacuate, as he will hold this thing here for as long as he can. Facing the void of the Wraith though, Kiorn really doesn't know how long he will last, but Taran tells him it's okay. If that attack landed just now, it will be fine. Kiorn wonders if he's saying that this attack wasn't his full strength. A young knight hiding in the mountains can hunt a rate that even nobles have a hard time dealing this. At that time, the veteran knight thought this. What he was seeing right now isn't just some small connection he happened to make in a rural village. This scene before his eyes, filled with so much power, could be the beginning of a wizard who will turn the entire world on its head. Taran is fine with this, as he was wondering about his limits. Kiorn, however, doesn't want to let him do it, no matter how talented he may be. That thing is an extremely tough opponent. They have to join forces. Just as he says that, the beast lunges at him, almost killing him right there, before Taran sends it flying with another strike. Kiorn realizes that right now, he would only get in Taran's way. He couldn't even react to this attack. At the moment, he is no help. What he must do right now is make sure that the talent of this young man blooms. As Taran strikes again, he seems rather annoyed, as this is clearly not working. Kiorn explains that he cannot kill a Wraith with physical attacks. As Taran dodges again, he asks how he has to kill it then, so Kiorn tells him to use fire or lightning. Taran summons a blob of fire onto the beast, but it's not working. Kiorn thinks that he meant to apply power to another living being. Establishing proper casualty is a basic requirement. Does he really not even know the most basic common sense of a wizard? Suddenly, he connects the dots, as perhaps he was the one who killed the monster and left it alone to become a Wraith. This means that Taran has never absorbed mana in his life, and he is already that strong. He tells him not to light a fire, but shoot it. After dodging again, Taran begins to form a ball of fire in his hand. To a wizard, making a fire shouldn't be that difficult of a thing, but controlling the fire requires another set of training. However, Taran can just do it immediately. He smashes the ball of fire right into the beast's face, making the Wraith scream out and wail on the ground as the fire consumes it. Kiorn tells him to not lose focus, and to keep pouring mana into it so the fire doesn't go out. He should aim to burn every single speck of that thing. Taran doesn't react. Instead, he remains focused as the Wraith slowly fades into ash, lifeless. Kiorn can't believe it. They won against an absurdly strong Wraith, which not even a noble could have defeated on their own, but he took it down. Taran turns to him and asks if it's really over now, and Kiorn explains that if he doesn't want to meet another Wraith, he needs to absorb the mana first. Taran asks how he does that, and Kiorn guides him. He should imagine himself draining something into himself, the very soul of the monster. Taran closes his eyes, and as his palm hovers over the corpse, something green begins to be absorbed by him. He slowly opens his eyes and feels his entire body in a second, forming a sentiment he's never felt before. Kiorn notes that he will feel some sort of pleasure. He can't believe it even after seeing it with his eyes though. This really is his first time absorbing mana. After one's first awakening, mana grows slowly with age. The best way to grow it is to kill monsters or wizards and absorb their mana. But this was Taran's first time absorbing mana, yet he's already able to handle magic at such a level, meaning his innate potential is on a different plane of existence. He calls out Taran, apologizing for being rude to him, and asks which house he belongs to. Taran just kind of stares at him and notes that he should get treated first, as he's kind of bleeding everywhere on the ground. After Taran bandages his hand, Kiorn looks at it, and apologizes once again for his rudeness. For him to make someone as esteemed as himself do something like this, he can only apologize. Taran sighs. He's told him many times already that he is not someone esteemed. He's just some shepherd who doesn't even know whose father is, so he would like him to stop it. Kiorn understands. He doesn't need to glare at him like that. Kiorn still wonders why a powerful mage like him would be a shepherd. He does not mean it in a belittling sense, but it really does not suit him. Taran explains that it was the request of his mother. She told him to do this right up until the moment she died. Below the mountain, there are nobles, If it's revealed that he is a wizard, he will only be used by them and then discarded. Kiorn notes that she was a wise woman, surprising Turan, as he thought he would say that she was rather overprotective. Kiorn explains that she was not entirely wrong. Wizards have great power, and that great power is what brings out conflict. Just 20-some years ago, there was a major war between great noble houses. It was the war between House Arabian, which he served, and the great house of Zahar. Many people lost their lives in that war. Out of roughly 3,000 Arabian knights at the time, more than 900 died, nearly a third. Sadly, everyone close to him was in that third. His friend Denver, who always said he would open a laundry shop once the war ended. His teacher Hartman, who scolded him, saying he still had much to learn. Even his beloved wife and son, they were all massacred, and he was the only one who survived. That is why his mother was kind of right. A knight's life can vanish more easily and more meaninglessly than even a commoner, but the one thing she was wrong about was his aptitude. Turan asks what he means, and Kiorn notes it's kind of embarrassing to say this while in such a state, but he is a knight with fairly good skill, yet he easily destroyed the monster wraith that he couldn't even let a scratch on. His potential isn't merely that of a knight. At minimum, he's at the level of a noble. Among them, he is at least upper tier. Turan takes all of this in, noting that his mother said that his father was a knight. Was that a lie, perhaps? Kiorn explains that on rare occasions, a child worse than a knight is born among nobles, or a noble class child is born out of a knight. In that sense, he thinks it would be better for him to leave this hill and go out into the big wide world. Turan asks why, so Kiorn tells him that humans need more nobles and knights. Humans are not the complete masters of this world after all. Long ago, the other races that were pushed out by the gods are still watching for a chance to rise again, and in the middle of that, the nobles only wage war amongst each other. That is why this is an age that desperately needs capable people like him. More than anything, he isn't satisfied living like this, isn't he? Turan thinks on it, and asks what he could gain below the mountain, but Kiorn notes it's depending on what he wants. Wealth, fame, power, everything is possible if he gets the one piece. Sorry, if he goes outside, as this is a rather dull life that he is living. He should think about it. He could wander like him and destroy monsters that threaten people, or become an explorer that ventures into the unknown. Maybe he will even be adopted into a house and walk the path of power. Turan meets him outside, saying that he might be right. Tea would be far more interesting than herding sheep here. For the first time, he is seriously curious about the outside world. Kiorn is worried that he might be planting too many expectations into him, so he will support him in every way possible. He also wonders what his bloodline ability is. He should have asked first. Turan doesn't know what that is, and Kiorn apologizes. He keeps forgetting he doesn't know much about magic. A bloodline ability is a trait nobles inherit from their ancestors, the Freyans. Whether or not he has a bloodline ability is also what separates nobles from knights. Was there perhaps any spell that felt very easy and simple when he used magic? Or some outstanding ability he has that doesn't need magic? Turan looks at his fist, noting that he's not just strong, right? Kiorn explains that having mana makes a wizard's physician capabilities stronger. Turan notes that he has a good nose, and he's pretty good at throwing stones, as he already saw. Kiorn notes that having a sense of smell that is very good could be a bloodline ability. So could throwing weapons, as it's one of House Arabian's traits, but it's a fairly common one. Turan tells him more and more, but after he finishes, he sees Kiorn act somber out of nowhere. This is because he thinks he knows which house his abilities are closest to. It's a great house, known as Pursuers and Hunters. It's House Zahar, the one that fought a war with House Arabian. Turan's eyes widen with remorse as he realizes what this means. Remorse for something he never did. Is he really telling him that he's from the bloodline as this man's enemies? He doesn't even know what to say to him. Should he apologize? But these are actions of relatives he's never met, who are strangers to him. Kiorn sees the worry in his face and pats his shoulder, telling him not to look so down, as he didn't participate in that war himself. Turan still feels bad, but Kiorn tells him this is an adult situation. If they try to wash blood with blood, the fighting will never cease. Turan wonders if he has any regrets now about telling him to go down that hill. Kiorn notes that if he goes down the mountain and pursues power, he will inevitably end up joining the Zahar family. He has an amazing ability after all, but he trusts his character. Turan doesn't know exactly what that means, so Kiorn explains that he's talking about the goodness within him. He saved him, deciding to reveal an identity he'd hidden his entire life. Rather, if someone like him joined the Zahar family and rose into a high position, perhaps it could prevent such a terrible thing from happening ever again. Either way, there's no need to think too much about it. After all, it's not like he's decided right now whether to join the family or not. Turan notes that his mind is clear now, though he wants to try and go down the mountain. Kiorn says he thought well, but Turan will only do so once his injury is healed. Kiorn finds him too kind. He's merely a bit scratched, but indeed he really is a good person. Inside, Kiorn explains that to use magic, one absolutely needs mana, which is why mana is commonly called the key to omnipotence. It's not a truly omnipotent power, as the rather grandiose name suggests, but to use magic, he needs mana to match it. Turan asks if what the standard is for mana that matches magic. Kiorn is going to explain right now that the difficulty of magic is largely determined by 3 factors. First is bloodline, second is affinity, and third is causality. The first one, bloodline, is determined by the bloodline he was born with. This applies to most nobles who are not knights. For example, it would be difficult for him to heal his wounds with magic, but for the Revista bloodline in the south, it's something they can do without even training. That is a power that comes from their bloodline. Turan asks about affinity, and Kiorn explains that he can also think of it as familiarity. It's the concept that a mage can more easily perform things that they prefer to, or are used to. Turan guesses it's like how he can make a fireball, if he thinks of it as a throwing rock, and Kiorn confirms as such. Probably, if he had simply made flames, he wouldn't have been able to achieve that firepower. Last one, which is the most important, is causality, which even he doesn't fully understand. What would happen if he tried to kill him directly, using mana? Turan guesses some light would shine from his head, but that would be it. As Kiorn does the same thing to a cup, he explains that this is exactly the phenomenon that occurs from a lack of causality, when there's no appropriate cause for a desired outcome, and when what needs to be achieved is excessively difficult. That's when this applies. Turan can understand it a little bit. If he wanted to kill him, rather than spending mana wishing for death, he would need to provide a cause of death, like creating and shooting flame, because creating and shooting fire is more natural than lighting one. Kiorn happily confirms as such. Honestly, he could become a scholar instead of a mage. Turan is confused. If he can control ordinary animals as he wishes, why is it that magical beasts need something like that? With this, Kiorn continues to explain everything he knows to him, and Turan realizes that magic is not easy. Kiorn agrees. An excellent mage known not just for how to use mana, but the principles and situations behind it as well. Turan wonders though, does the Zahar bloodline also have special magic? Kiorn heard they are skilled in stealth and tracking, so he should try it at least once. Turan closes his eyes, thinking that he does not want to be seen by others, and he wishes neither sound nor smell could be detected. Sure enough, his physical form becomes clear to the point that Kiorn cannot see him anymore. He succeeded, but this seems to make some dark memories pop up in his mind. Turan appears once again, and Kiorn notes that it's been a while since he's seen it, but it's still a terrifying ability. During the war, the Arabian Knights feared that ability the most. Turan notes it feels like kind of a cheat, but even so, Kiorn advises him to keep in mind that it doesn't make him invincible. Now then, he will teach him a few magic training methods. Turan wonders if he's not teaching too much to an enemy family's mage, but Kiorn explains that he saved his life and treated him too, and as he told him, he trusts his character. Later that day, Turan goes to the village chief, telling him that he is selling the sheep and leaving, but he wonders who is going to do the herding now, and how can he decide something like that without even consulting them? Turan explains that they should figure out how to find a shepherd themselves. How does it matter to them what he does to his belongings? Anyway, he hopes they will buy at a fair price. Otherwise, he's going to release the sheep and leave. They are free to capture them, but they will probably have a hard time doing so. The village chief can't believe this. This bastard always keeps his word, so he decides to just hand him a pouch of money and kick him out. As they both leave, Turan thinks that those villagers still owe him compensation for everything he did, right? Kiorn notes that he has no intention of collecting, and he wasn't the one who caught the beast, right? Eventually they end up at a crossroads, where they must part ways. Kiorn apologizes for refusing to travel together, but he is much more comfortable alone. Turan understands and thanks him for everything. Kiorn tells him to take care, and Turan hopes that they can meet again with smiling faces. As he left, Turan watched Kiorn for a long time. Only later did he realize why he didn't want the old knight to speak to him formally. Although he never lacked affection because of his mother, the boy had secretly been yearning for a father figure, someone who could be a role model for what kind of man he should become. With that, Turan keeps traveling, eventually ending up in an arid desert. He sees a few people, guessing they are merchants, and goes up to them, wanting to ask directions. A grizzled man asks who he is to block their path, and Turan notes that he is traveling alone and wanted to ask directions about the nearest city. The old man tells him that if he follows the road they came from, he will reach a city called Mure. Turan understands and turns to leave, thanking them for their help, but one of them stops him, asking if he's really just going to leave after getting information. Turan asks what he means, and the man notes that if he received something, he should give something in return, like that bulging bag of his. Turan now understands that, as he sees them with swords drawn, they are bandits. The old man reveals the armor below his cloak, and notes that this is recklessness. This is a wasteland where nobody would find it strange if someone died, right? So, he will gently take off that bag and cloak while they are being nice, as they really don't want to do any unnecessary work. Turan understands, they are bandits who kill people. Well, he was just waiting for a moment to practice what he has learned from that man anyway. The bandits can't help but laugh. He might have just gone insane, to be talking like some kind of wizard. In response, Turan flicks his hand upward, and summons a gust of wind, which sends them all flying. Instead of just generating wind out of thin air, if he shapes it with his hands and amplifies it, he uses far less mana. He didn't know he could whip up wind so strong using so little mana. The bandits are on the dusty ground recovering, so Turan takes a bit of water out of his water skin and freezes it in a smaller, calculated strike. His victim can only watch as he is pummeled with the icicles, unable to do anything against their steady advance. Turan doesn't react. He wonders if this wasn't supposed to be a spell that is useful when there's a lot of water nearby. If he's honest, Just throwing stones feels faster and a lot stronger. The bandit leader puts his hand up. He apologizes. They did not realize they were against the grace of a wizard. He begs for forgiveness, just this once. As he spouts more nonsense, the 3 other bandits rush Turan from behind, but he sensed their presence long ago. So with one stomp, he spears them up using hardened sand, making them a memento of his power. The bandit leader is completely shocked. It didn't take a second for his men to die. Turan wants to ask one thing, and the bandit chief immediately bows, noting that he will answer everything. Turan asks why they even attacked without any semblance of a plan. If he's a traveler walking alone, he could be a wizard. The bandit chief explains that it's because he bowed his head. Even when they spoke rudely, he bowed and greeted them, so they assumed he was an ordinary person. Turan thanks him, as that taught him something quite useful. The bandit chief thinks that he will really be spared, before he notices the glowing orb of water standing right above his head. Turan remembers Kiorn's words. From now on, he's going to meet a lot of people, and there's something he absolutely must tell them. He should never show mercy to scum like bandits, the kind who will not hesitate to harm others for profit. The reason he is saying this so firmly, he probably understands, because if he spares a life out of pity, he could end up harming 10 good people because of it. Turan looks at the leader's corpse, thinking that he's stalled enough, and continues walking. The road the bandits dragged their cart along on, those clear wheel tracks cutting across the sand, it left one thought, which was searing in Turan's mind. He's just killed people. He felt a bit of guilt, but he could not just let them go, because Kiorn's warning was sounding in his mind, again and again. People who could decide, without as much as a second thought, to rob and kill for profit, would target others again, at any time. Like wheel tracks in the desert that are slowly fading away as weeds grow over them, Turan's chaotic heart gradually settled down as he recalled Kiorn's teaching, and just like that, he arrived in a new world. As he walks over the horizon, he sees his destination, the small city of Mage. But to him, this is the biggest thing in the world. He walks around inside of it. It's his first time seeing so many people at once. Even the architecture is completely different than the village. Now it really feels like he is in a city. He walks up to a fruit stand, where the seller greets him warmly and asks what he would like. Turan tells him he's not a customer, thinking about what Kiorn said about finding an inn after getting to the city, as there should always be one. The fruit seller tells him to get lost if he's not buying, as he's distracting his other customers. Turan doesn't understand why he's acting rude. Is it some unspoken rule in cities that he has to buy fruit before asking questions? He points to an apple and asks how much it is. When the fruit seller says, 2 dupi, Turan looks in his hand, trying to figure out what that is. The fruit seller can see he's an outsider, so he tells him that he can pay with other coins. As he pays, Turan asks where he can find an inn, and the fruit seller tells him to go straight down the road behind the Cape Shot. When he turns left, he will find a place with a blue roof, which is the biggest inn in the city. When he arrives there, Lena, one of the inn staff, welcomes him in, and notes that he's quite handsome. Turan asks how much the night is, and she says, 16 dupi. As he pays, he notes that he has something he would like to ask. Is there a monster nearby with a bounty on it? He thinks that he must kill monsters and absorb their mana, and he said hunting monsters would earn money too. She's not answering though, and then points towards the bar, noting that there's no such thing as free in this world. After getting a drink, Lena tells him about the city hall, but Turan doesn't really know what that is. This surprises Lena. He really is from the countryside. She explains that city halls are where they handle various public affairs. The officials who work there are employed by the city lord. It's probably closed since the sun is down already, but if he wants to find a monster bounty, he should go to the city hall tomorrow. She asks if he's a monster hunter too, but again, Turan doesn't really know what that is. She explains that people talk about it. If an ordinary person hunts monsters, they become a wizard. So he wants to become one too, right? Naturally, that's just a baseless superstition. Suddenly, someone puts their hand on Turan's shoulder and says, "It's no superstition. That's a real fact. He saw it with his own eyes. This is Midan, a self-titled monster hunter." Lena is surprised to see him alive, but Midan told her before, he's not allowing himself to die until he becomes a wizard. Turan points at his shoulder, and Midan takes his hand off, apologizing. Turan gets up, and wants to know more about what he just said. Midan explains that wizards get stronger when they hunt monsters. By the same principle, if an ordinary person were to kill a monster, they can become a wizard. The 4 of them are hunting monsters to become wizards. Turan asks if this means that one of them is already a wizard, but Midan denies that claim. In this city, there are only the Lord's wizard and 3 under him. He also heard him say he wants to hunt monsters, but for that his gear is rather shabby. Doesn't he have a weapon? Turan pulls out his sling, and Midan notices how worn it is. Turan explains that it's good for firing something about the size of an egg rather quickly. Midan thinks that with that, he could easily hunt rabbit or fox monsters, and also notes that they were looking for one more shooter, so why doesn't he come hunting with them? Turan smiles but refuses, and retreats to his room for the night. There is no reason to go hunting together with someone else, but this really was a chaotic day. He's still finding it hard to believe he actually left the village. He's wondering what will happen, but then hears a knock at the door. When he asks who it is, nobody answers, and he remembers what he talked about with Kiorn while on the road, that he shouldn't let his guard down, even in an inn. Even if it's a city, it doesn't mean that he is safe. He should never let his guard down. Now, Turan is slowly turning the door handle, manifesting a bunch of mana in his hand. But after opening the door, he finds Lena, who thought that the room she set up for him might be cold, so she came to warm him up. Turan doesn't understand, even after she tugs at her tunic. What does she mean by that? Lena notes that it's exactly what it sounds like, but Turan really doesn't get what it sounds like. She comes closer, and notes that for a small amount of money, she will do whatever he wants. Turan tells her that there's nothing he wants, but she advises him not to lie. She can tell just by looking at his face. Unfortunately for her, Turan's face looks like someone who has reached enlightenment, as he learned from Kiorn. Out of all the lessons, this one he was the most adamant about. He advised him to always be careful with inmaids or night workers in general. Most of them carry STDs after all. Wizards are naturally strong to any disease, but even so, if he's careless, he could pass it on when he gets with another woman. He should not let desire trap him into something he will regret. As he hears Lena storm off, Turan thinks that cities aren't easy to live in either. The fruit guy, even Lena now, to think they would put a price on even small bits of information and conversation. They really are cold-hearted. As he tries to sleep though, he hears Midan's group talk as they rise to the top. One of them asking Midan why he was trying to bring that guy along earlier. Honestly, he did not look like much of anything. The others in the group agree. He seemed cocky, a perfect monster victim. Midan tells them that it's because he reminds him of himself when he was young. Hearing he hunts with a weapon like that made him worry. If he is at least next to him, he figured he might survive a little longer. Turan smiles and turns to face the ceiling. Perhaps not everyone in the city is as cold-hearted as he first thought. The first thing next morning, he goes to the city hall, where the clerk there asks how he can help. Turan asks if he is an official, and when the man confirms as such, he notes that he came here to hunt monsters. He also remembers what Kiorn told him, that the world would not be kind to him, because if they think about it the other way around, there is no reason to be kind. If he wants people to treat him with kindness, the method is simple. He should reveal himself as a wizard. With that, the ordinary people will bow their heads as he walks by. Turan is handed one of the bounties, which he can't take, so he has to give it back. He looks at the drawing and asks if it's a crow monster. The clerk tells him it's most definitely not a cat, and even if it's unlucky, if somehow he kills a monster, he should bring its corpse here. As if a wizard doesn't disperse the mana, it becomes a wraith. If he does leave a monster to become a wraith, he will be executed by the power of the city law. Turan already knows what happens when leaving monster corpses be. He will not repeat that mistake again. He asks if knights don't hunt monsters too, but the clerk asks him, does he really think they are people with time to spare? A knight's job is to maintain public order of the city. Hunting monsters outside the city? That's for thugs like him to handle. Turan says nothing as he leaves, leaving the clerk to think that he will be another corpse they will have to bury. Surprisingly though, Turan comes back with the crow, which was cleaned as cleanly as possible. The clerks are all surprised and ask how in the hell he brought it so fast. Did he kill it alone? Turan confirms as such, and asks how he receives the bounty. One of the clerks immediately rushes to get it, and as he hands it over to him, he notes that he must have worked hard, so he should get some rest. The clerks continue looking at the crow. Even its wings are intact. Is it possible to bring back a blade crow without it shooting one feather? Suddenly though, the clerk with a bushy mustache sees that Turan is still here. He asks if there are any other monsters worth hunting, and they realize that he can still go on. After a few days of hunting, as requested, Lena brings out the most expensive items in the menu, but she's never dreamed that someone like him could defeat 30 monsters in just 3 days. He probably made a bunch of dough, right? Turan notes that money isn't his only goal, and thinks that the goal is the mana of the monsters. Thanks to that, he most definitely got stronger. Compared to when he met Kiorn, his mana has increased several fold, but he can already feel a limit. With only weak monster mana, it might be hard to get stronger. He also notes that they didn't steal a bit of this, did they? As he thinks there's something missing. Lena tells him he ate it all by himself, somehow, and the chef notes that he made it for the first time in a while, so he's glad he enjoyed it. Turan gets up, noting that it was all delicious, and two of Midan's group approach. One grabs his cloak and asks how he can eat something tasty by himself. He's a skinny runt, but he's been making a ton of money lately, or so he's heard. As he asks for some charity from his partners, Turan Karate chops him in the face, as this is basically all of the charity that he wants to give out. The other dashes toward him with a pretty open punch, so Turan just steps aside and knocks him on his ass. The first one, now recovered, grabs a chair and rushes in, but Turan just blocks it and flicks his head so hard he falls on it. With Lena's scream to not fight in the inn, the fighting stops, and that night, Midan comes with everyone and apologizes for what his guys did. He gave the both of them a proper scolding, and he can promise that it will never happen again. The thing is, they've been tight on money lately, so they probably got jealous when they saw him. Under his command, they both apologize. Turan asks if things really are that hard, and Midan explains that things are limited. In about 3 days, he doesn't think they will be able to afford the room fee, but that is their problem to deal with. Turan suddenly produces a pouch of coins and notes that this is repayment for the kindness he showed before, when he said he was worried and tried to bring him along. Midan is shocked that he actually heard that, but Turan notes that nothing is for free. In exchange, he wants some information too, which Midan is more than happy to provide. The next day, As Turan goes to the nearby forest, he thinks that this might be the last hunt in this city. Medan gave him information about the next one, so it's about time he left. He gave out a lot more information than he expected. Medan really is a good guy. He doesn't feel as seasoned as Kiorn, but that just makes him purer and kinder. Suddenly, he feels a familiar smell and dashes toward it, praying that he is wrong. Unfortunately, his nose hasn't betrayed him this time. He smelled blood, and he found a dead person, someone from Medan's group. Right next to him, he finds Medan too, who was clutching some of the coins he had given him. He crouches down to look at him better, wondering what the hell happened. Suddenly, one of them, who is barely alive at this point, says rabbit, again and again, until Turan faces the thing that killed them, who is munching on one of his comrades. It's a rabbit, all right, one dragged out of the darkest pits of hell. With a sudden dash that doesn't even make a sound at first, the beast lunges at Turan, who barely has time to dodge. He takes out his slingshot and throws a rock at the beast, which suddenly splits into three after getting close to it. Unfortunately, the beast uses its ears to defend against his technique and rushes in again. However, when it sees that Turan is no longer there, the beast stops in its tracks and looks around on confusement, just as Turan appears from behind and stabs it in the neck. After that, he dashes away and disappears again, making the rabbit charge at a tree, but it doesn't stop just at that tree. Using its sharp teeth, it cuts down tree after tree, this being the last of its powers. Eventually, it roars out in anger, and the wound previously incurred on it takes its toll, making the beast fall down, completely dead. Turan immediately absorbs its mana, and almost immediately, he can feel that the amount is vastly different. It's more than the leopard monster he first encountered. The survivor can't believe it. He's a wizard. But then, why hide his identity? Turan doesn't answer, and instead asks if any of the four here have a family that he can pass their belongings to. But the young man simply cries as he says no, and looks out at his dead boss. That night, when Turan spoke to him, he explained that there's a great city nearby called Orem. It has something called a library, which is said to hold thousands of books. Turan was interested by this, but Medan explained that not just anyone can enter the library. Apparently, only wizards are allowed inside. At that moment, Turan decided to go to the great city he mentioned. Turan has taken his time to bury everyone. He looks at the four graves and hopes that they are all in a happier place as he leaves. Eventually, Turan arrives at the next city, and as he waits in line, he feels a bit embarrassed that he was shocked by the small city of Mure, as this is at least twice as big. He also didn't expect there to be this many people trying to enter, and they even have more guards. Perhaps they are screening for wanted criminals or something. Well, it's to be expected of a great city. It's got a more established system. Suddenly, he is told to halt and denied entry. As the guard has never seen clothes so filthy, he should go over to a corner and at least dust himself off. After that, Turan is granted entry and finds the library with ease, as it's pretty hard to miss. It's pretty overwhelming. It must have been built by magic. He approaches the gate and notes that he is trying to enter. One of the knights tells him that only wizards can enter, and Turan notes that he is one. The knight doesn't believe that. Is he trying to die by impersonating a wizard? Since he doesn't believe him, he tries to feel out for his mana. Kiorn previously told him that wizards recognize each other by sensing the other's mana. They can even tell whether or not the person is stronger than them. Turan doesn't dampen his mana, and just its presence makes the guards fall on his ass. He knows that this man is no ordinary wizard. He is at least noble class, or perhaps even higher. He immediately gets up, introducing himself as Kenya, a knight of House Valius, and would like to know which house he is from. Turan asks if he has to say, but Kenya denies such a thing. To use the library, though, he needs permission from the Master of Valtas, so he will contact the house immediately. Turan, at that point, thought that it would be a simple process. But now, as he is being bathed by maids in a bathtub bigger than his old house, he wonders how this even happened. Turan tells them to stop, and asks if it's a problem if he washes himself. One of the maids explains that if they fail to properly attend to him, they will be punished, so he lets them do what they want. After that, the maid who dresses him up just stares with her mouth gaping, making Turan wonder if there is something on his face. The maid apologizes. She was momentarily stunned by his beauty. Turan tells her that she needn't apologize, but they do not wish to be spoken to so casually. Suddenly someone else enters, a younger-looking girl, who is also surprised by his new look. Just now, he looked like a beggar, but after washing and dressing him, he looks like a prince. Turan introduces himself, and Azella does so too. She asks what house he is a part of, but Turan notes that for personal reasons, it's pretty difficult to say. Azella thinks it's a real shame, but then smiles. He's hiding who he is, so maybe she can play a little prank. Suddenly, she lets all of her mana out, as she wants to see what he will do. Thank you for watching. See you next time.